Go again and do top 6 again, potentially maybe even top 4. Hey guys, my name is Anthony, and in today's video I'm going to be talking over round 9 of TSRL at Canada. So if you want to see more videos similar to this, make sure to hit the like button, and if you're new to the channel, consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel. So as you've seen just now, we ended up doing a little bit of a skip from the beginning of the stream to the beginning of the first lap, and the reason for that is because for some reason the stream ended up just breaking down or whatever it is that happened, which actually caused a major issue in this entire race. So moving on to the second lap straight away, as we'll touch on that later, we do an 8.5, which is the fastest lap at the time, but I knew we could still go quicker. So going into this final lap, I did want to try and improve our time, and this ended up being the fastest lap. So I'm gonna leave you guys here and let you guys see a lap of Canada uninterrupted. This is not a great lap. I've messed up the lap. So as we are on the back straight now, there was definitely some time to find in this lap. It definitely wasn't a perfect lap by any means. A perfect lap for me would probably be a high 7, so maybe a 7.9, a 7.8. But we crossed the line to do an 8.2, which did end up lasting the time. Nobody improved, so we ended up getting our second pole in a row. And then moving on now, you can see it's wet conditions, and we're going to be starting on the intermediates, and we've already underfueled the car. So as we've got 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights, and away we go. And this was a pretty bad start, and once again, as I said before, the stream ended up cutting off. And what ended up happening is, because I wasn't focusing on the actual race itself, I was focusing on getting the stream back together. I didn't actually realize that it was going to be a full wet race. So right now I have a dry setup on a full wet race, so I wasn't prepared for it, and sadly, as you can see, we ended up making quite a big mistake going into turn 2, and it lost us a lot of time today's rhombus. So the first couple laps was honestly really just about trying to find as much confidence as I could, because I didn't really do much wet practice. Again, this my bad obviously. When it comes to these races, you really want to be doing at least a bit of wet practice, because you never know, it could rain at any track except for tracks like Bahrain and stuff like that, where it rarely ever rains. But moving on to the end of lap 3 now, you can see we're really just trying to find our confidence as we get our first warning. And as I mentioned before, I wasn't prepared for it to be a wet conditions race, because I didn't check to see if it was, because I was focusing so much on getting the stream back up and running, because the stream had just stopped working for some reason. So as we continue on, we're just really trying to find as much confidence as we can. We're gaining time each and every lap. We're increasing our pace each and every lap. However, Days was pretty quick in this race, and I have a feeling it is because he had a wet setup. But moving on to lap 10 now, we're going into the pits. Days went into the pits the last lap, sorry. So he went for the undercut, and that is the biggest thing that I want you guys to remember, moving on to the big mistake that comes later on in this race. So as we move into the pits now, we're waiting to see where Dazed is going to come out ahead of us, because obviously he went for the undercut, and undercutting in Canada is very, very powerful. As you can see, Dazed has already passed us, and I think by the time that we actually get out of the pits, Dazed was already about 5 seconds ahead of us. 5 seconds in dry conditions is a lot, so I'm sure you can imagine 5 seconds in wet conditions. However, on the full wet tyres, we were actually showcasing our pace as we just continued to catch up to Dazed. Obviously, there were some people in front of us that he managed to get past. As you can see, we're moving on to lap 14 now. This is when we get past Pickless, I believe that is, in the Williams, and he was still on the intermediate tyre, so in these conditions now where it was pretty much full wet conditions, he was driving pretty slow, but I didn't want to just dive down the inside because I didn't know whether I could damage a wing or anything like that. So I just waited for the right time and then overtook him when I felt it was the right time. And by this point, we are 2 seconds behind Dazed at this point. And honestly, for the first, I want to say 15 laps or so, we were definitely the quickest guys on the track. As you can see, Dazed is right now about 2 seconds ahead of us, but then I'm about 9 seconds ahead of P3. So when it came to pace around this track, me and Dazed were definitely the quickest guys on the track at the time. But moving on to lap 18 now, this is where the big mistake happens. So as you know before, Dazed went for the undercut. And I'm going to stop it right here because I want you guys to see Dazed is going into the pits right now. And in my head, I was thinking to myself, if he's going into the pits, he must know something that I don't, because I never checked any of the weather forecast or anything like that. So I thought he was going into the pits to try and undercut me again. But it turns out he was only going into the pits to fix a damaged wing. However, at the time, I just decided to go with my gut feeling at the last second, and I ended up following him into the pits. And once again, I want to reiterate, he went into the pits to fix a damaged wing. He wasn't trying to undercut me or anything. I think when he was passing one of the AlphaTauris, I believe it was, he ended up getting a damaged wing from passing them, and because of that, we basically ended up pitting for no reason, thinking he was going for some sort of undercut. And right after that, I ended up sliding out of turn 5, I believe it is, and we ended up with wing damage, which means we needed to pit again right after pitting the previous lap. So honestly, it was the biggest mistake. It was the most rookie mistake I've made since league race, since I started league racing in January, and I don't know what to say. The entire race, if you go back and watch the stream, I was pretty much just talking about how embarrassed I was to make such a rookie mistake. And honestly, I'm not going to lie to you guys, with each passing lap that went by, it was more and more painful. And as you can see now, we're going all the way to lap 35 to end the race because nothing really happened after that. And we ended up finishing in P6, which sounds like a decent result in the grand scheme of things, but considering that we had the pace to win the race, it was heartbreaking, especially since I've still not won my first race in league racing yet. So honestly, this should be a huge lesson to you guys. Make sure that whenever you're in wet conditions or even changeable conditions, make sure you're consistently asking Jeff what the weather forecast is like. Ask him, you know, which tires are the right tires, and don't do what I did just now. Don't pit thinking that, you know, you're getting undercutted by somebody when potentially they could just be going to change their wing. So just make sure that you stick into your own strategy. Don't do what I done. Don't try and do any last minute changes unless it's like a safety car situation or something like that. Just stick to your own strategy, and it will work if you're confident in your own self and your own abilities, which is what ended up happening in the next race at France, which I'll probably be uploading at some point this week, maybe next week. You'll see that I learned from that mistake. I went with my own strategy and it ended up paying off big time. So have confidence in yourself when it comes to league racing. If you're second guessing yourself, that's when problems are going to arise and you're going to end up making big mistakes like how I made in this race, where I basically just threw away my first ever league race win. So I'm going to finish the video off here. If you enjoyed this video and you learned something from this video, make sure to hit the like button, and as I said in the beginning, if you're new to the channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button because we're trying to hit 3,000 subscribers this month. So I'll see you guys in my next video.